Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the merciful praise is done to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because of Him, we can gather in good situation and condition. Salawat and salam may praise to our beloved Prophet, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is really loved by Allah and has guided us to choose the best choice of the way life. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Wiwit Artika. I'm a lecturer from FKIP Unsia from Biology Department. It is my honor to be a moderator for this fourth session of the keynote. And I would like to appreciate and thank you so much for Prof. Nasser Mansour that I heard from the committee who have been attend very earlier in this morning. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, may I briefly introduce you to our keynote speaker from United Kingdom. So Prof. Dr. Nasser Mansour is a professor in science education, Graduate School of Education at University of Exeter, United Kingdom. He has been recognized and promoted by Supreme of University in Egypt to full professor in science education at Tenta University. He is also a member of Distinguished Contribution to Research Award Committee for National Association for Research in Science Teaching. He also served as editorial board for international journal published in English or Arabic, the editor-in-chief for Social Science and Humanities Open Journal, and an associate editor for Thinking Skill and Creativity. Professor Mansour has a research interest in aspects of teaching and learning in science, including the STS, curriculum studies, inquiry-based learning and teaching, controversial issue, scientific literacy, STEM, creative thinking in science, and teaching about nature of science. He also interested in multicultural studies in science education, also the communication technology, ICT, and 21st century skills. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would like to please Prof. Mansour to proceed the talk in 50 minutes with the topic S in STEM education and school science, from science capital to STEM capital. So, Prof. Mansour, time and place are yours. Thank you so much. You can proceed.
Thank you so much for this kind introduction, but I would like to thank you also for inviting me for this conference, which is focused on a very, very important topic, and it's a very timely topic for Indonesia and for all the world. So thanks for addressing this important issue. But also, I would like to thank so much the organizers for this conference. Doing it virtually is not easy at all, especially you have a big number of presenters and the keynotes, but you have done a brilliant job and a wonderful job and outstanding communication. So makes our life very easy virtually. Even now, a minute ago, I got a reminder about this keynote. So thanks so much for that. Okay, I will share my screen with you to just start the presentation, and hopefully this will work well. Okay. Just to make sure, can you see the presentation?
Yes, it's very clear.
It's very clear. Yeah, the topic today is on S in STEM. S stands for science. So I'm talking about S in STEM, science education and school science. And we will see what is the difference in this presentation. But also I'm going to argue about what is the capital, what is science capital, and what is STEM capital, and how can we move from science capital to STEM capital. Okay, where I'm located in southwest in England, in UK, and coming from Exeter University, which is one of the top universities in UK, and we have a wonderful city. We hope that we welcome you soon to Exeter here. And this is my interest, just in case if you want to get in contact and we can have a network and work together, because this is the purpose of this academia and this conference. Okay, what I'm going to focus on. What is the key argument for me today? One argument is to have STEM school culture, and this will require collaboration among stakeholders and building this kind of collaborative and supportive STEM community. But we have to understand that there are many factors and the agents that can facilitate or hinder the integration of STEM in the current science education. And we have to capitalize on the factors that can facilitate the integration of the STEM in the current science education. So we will aim to help developing this kind of science capital. And you will hear from me a lot today about the science capital and STEM capital. So develop the the science capital through engagement in school science, which in turn supports the development of students 21st century. And that is the outcome we hope to end or for the science curriculum or for the science education to help us with. Okay, what I'm going to focus on today. One thing, I'm going to present, of course, something about what STEM education is, but also the key ideas about developing the STEM curriculum through answering the key questions. What is the science capital? And what is the STEM capital? And how can we capitalize on the science through STEM resources available in schools? But also, it's not just the school, it's about the community we live in. In this presentation, I will also argue critically the relationship between science capital, STEM capital, and STEM culture, and the cultural and the human capital. And we will see how can we put the three capitals together to create this STEM culture. Okay. From science to science in society. As we try to build STEM culture in school, the first thing we need to understand, what is science? What is the nature of science that we are promoting? And who is developing this science? Are we contributing to this science as a community of, for example, British community, American community, Indonesian community? So who is contributing to this science, and how can we address this in the science curriculum? So this is quite important, which is part of the history of science. And when we understand what is science we are going to deliver or want to deliver, of course, we will answer the question, what is science education for? And if we put both together, what is science and what is science education for, we will come up to the question is, what should the science curriculum will look like? Answering all these questions will help us to start to think about who is delivering, of course, the teacher. And we'll start to think about the science teacher education in service and pre-service. Okay, so there are three things we need to think about. Of course, science. And of course, we hope to do a STEM career and STEM culture and STEM capital. But we live in a society and we are human. We build history, we have culture. So putting these three together, that will be very important to have this STEM culture. And that's what I will focus heavily today on my presentation, about the relationship between these three, addressing these three. Okay, I will start with the science capital. Science capital is a concept that can help us to understand why some young people have a science identity and why some other don't have this science identity. Why a young children age maybe 11 or 12 say, oh, science for me. I think as a scientist, I would like to study science in the future. That's when we call this, yes, we have a science capital and we have a science identity. When you have science identity at that age, we can ensure, and that will ensure to us that in future, this child might have career in STEM or might like to continue studying in STEM. So developing this kind of science capital to have attitude about science and to study in science, knowledge about science, thinking scientifically, that will help us to have these students or these kids to continue studying in STEM disciplines. So science capital here, we can define it in four aspects, or have four aspects here. What you know. So this is about knowledge of science, but also about how you think about what you know. And what you do. So you know, and you have kind of scientific thinking, but what are you doing with this? What are you doing with science when you are in your kitchen? What are you doing in science when you go and to be a customer to buy a TV or something like that? So our behavior in our society, our practice in our society, and who you know as scientists, current scientists or the scientists in the past. So who do you know? So if you put all these four aspects together, that will make science capital. And we need to consider these aspects when we come to think about the curriculum and think about the pedagogy, as we will talk. Okay. Moving to the STEM capital here. So STEM capital, that is the knowledge and social contacts, attitude, skill, experiences that a student or a person has, and how those resources inform their engagement and choices in schools. Thinking about career in science, having a career in science, and thinking about a career in science or STEM, that might help me engaging with the activities in the schools. So STEM has this kind of a mission that all students, that's what we hope, all students for further education in science, technology, and mathematics, to prepare them to take career in science or in STEM. Allow all students access to career in these fields and to prepare all the students for the opportunities of the future. And we will talk more about that in a minute. Okay, so what is science and what STEM education? So answering these questions, and when we look at all these pictures, we can see science. We have science in the lab, we have science in what we eat. As we are networking now, this happens through science, science in beauty, makeup, and things like that. So we are surrounded by science, but this is the community we live in. This is the career we are dealing with. So to do this and live in this society, that is the relationship between the science capital and the STEM capital. STEM career, STEM opportunities, STEM society, STEM culture, and that's what we are hoping. And we hope that the science curriculum will address all these issues considering the society. Okay. When we have a child going to the school in Indonesia or going to the school in United Kingdom, we find kind of differences because there are differences between these two students in terms of the culture. So students in the journey between home and the school is carrying many of their culture and elements of this society, and this has to be considered. What do we have in our society? What do we have in our community to bring to the school? So we are opening channels between the schools and the communities. And so our resources, our human resources in our communities. So, and that's what we call science identity. So science identity is dealing with us in terms of history, in terms of gender, in terms of history, and that will make our identity identical, is different, unique, from a society to society, a country to country. So contextualizing science is quite important in our science curriculum. STEM capital and culture borders. So when you look at society like Indonesia, for example, what do you have in Indonesia? What do you have in Jakarta? How can you connect science and the schools to your community? Universities we have, how can we connect the university we are giving this conference today in to the schools? How can we communicate the outcome of this conference to our schools? So that is what we call STEM culture. What do we have in a community? What do we have in the industry? What do we have in terms of informal science education? Museums in Indonesia, museums in Jakarta, and that's what we call culture. And that's how we can develop the STEM and science capital in the schools. So science or science education has to consider this kind of the beliefs we have about our culture, about science, about STEM. So this needs to be considered when we think about the science education. So our stereotypes about science education is quite important, and sometimes these stereotypes about science and scientists might put some students off to study science and might help students to take science as a career in the future or STEM related career in the future. So, and that again needs to be considered in the science curriculum and in the science education and in the science pedagogy when we are dealing with our scientific issues. Okay, I will give you one example about this culture. Okay, thinking, for example, about our sociocultural context, what's made of for a teacher, all right? And what I'm saying to a teacher about teacher can be applied to students. So we have in service training, and we have out school life for a teacher and students. We have a school, we have universities, but also we have our own religious beliefs. If we put all these together, that will make the teaching experience, and they can also make the student experience. So we have interpretation of this experience, and that will influence on how we teach or how can we learn science. And based on that, we have our constraints, we have identity. So we can have science identity, student identity, teacher identity, and that will develop our knowledge. And this is just one example about how our culture capital and the human capital and our culture interact with what we deliver in the school or what is already in our community. And that again needs to be considered when we teach science and learn science. And sometimes we have false contradiction between, for example, Islam, for example, and science. But any element of culture, we might have false contradiction. And that again needs to be considered when we think about the science curriculum, so considering again the human capital and the cultural capital, it's quite important. Contextualizing, have a context of the science and the context of the STEM we are delivering. This is quite important. You cannot impart, for example, if something working well in America and something working well in United Kingdom, you cannot easily say, all right, it works there, it will work for us in Indonesia, it will work for us maybe somewhere else. The context is quite important. Our culture is quite important. Okay, give you another important thing about addressing the culture and addressing the human capital for us, which is important to give a model for science students to see our great science. What did they do? And it's part of the history. Who is developing the history of science, and this is part of the nature of science. If I'm asking now the audience about, and I'm not expecting an answer at the moment, but I always say it when I'm in person, how many Muslim scientists do you know? Who can count 5 Muslim scientists? Say anything about even one scientist. Honestly, when I done that 2 years ago in Jakarta, when I was there, in the Islamic State University, I didn't get much. And when I done it in Saudi Arabia last year in Riyadh, in a conference there, I didn't get many. But if I convert the question to ask about how many Western scientists do you know, we will find lots of people are putting their hands up, because the curriculum we have is very Westernized. I have no problem to open to look at the culture of other and to look at the science curriculum from other countries, because at the end of the day we teach science. But it's important as part of the science and as part of the pedagogy of the science education is to give model, and this model should come from our community, and it comes also from the other, addressing the history of science very, very well. So this is quite important. I'll give you an example here. We have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Muslim scientists. Okay, giving just an example here, you get Razi, and if I'm giving a presentation about the history of science and the history of the Muslim scientists, we will have hours. Okay, Nisina did a lot. You give is the Ravi. So we did a lot in medicine, in math, in many things we did, okay? So, and you will have this presentation and you will look at it. Looking at here, for example, as we are talking about science, Jabir ibn Hayyan, father of the chemistry. Who knows Jabir ibn Hayyan in Indonesia or in UK or in somewhere else? How the Western science is addressing our culture and celebrating our culture. If they don't do, we should do it, because that will help the science capital, that will help the STEM capital, that will give free models for our kids and the Muslim community and the non-Muslim community as well. That by itself can create a peace. Science can create a peace between the West and others. Okay, so major books written by him. Many books written by Jabir ibn Hayyan, Book of Kingdom here. He's done lots of things in chemistry. Talking about chemistry, who knows about his contribution in about discovering nitric, hydrochloric, but also in terms of STEM, crystallization, and lots of things about preparation of various metals. So he's done a lot in STEM. So STEM is something not new for us. No, it's not new for us. It's been there for centuries, but we need to address that. Okay, gaps in STEM now. When we look at the future, if we look at the left side of the slide, the life and the future of STEM, what do we expect? 75 or more of jobs will be in STEM, okay? And not just STEM careers, it is STEM in every job. Even when you go to cut your hair, when you do your makeup, whatever you want to do in the community is in STEM and needs a STEM job. Okay, business and the industry, they want STEM. But when you look at what we have here, and after the 5th grade in elementary, we lose interest in STEM and science by 25%. And when students move in school, we lose another 15. So we lost now about 60%. And when they move to the secondary education, we lose another 15% of the students interested in science and the STEM. That means the outcome will be 25%. Who are going maybe to have to continue in STEM discipline. And that's not enough for our need, as we need 75%. So there is a gap here between the outcome of science and the outcome and the need of the society or the expectation of the STEM career. Okay. How can we capitalize on STEM resources? And how can we address this in our curriculum and science education? First of all, I have to highlight that we need to start very early. STEM is not something you will address it in higher education. When we have engineering or when we have medical schools, is something needs to happen very early in preschool, in elementary, and in middle school. So is this kind of continuum contribution of the science curriculum and the STEM curriculum, science capital and STEM capital needs to happen very early. So our STEM vision and our STEM aims needs to happen in this continuum, okay? Another thing which will help, which I started my presentation with, is opening the school to our community. Knowing your human capital, knowing your resources in your community. So if you are in Jakarta, for example, when you teach something on recycle, how is this happening in Jakarta? Okay, and that needs to be addressed. And if it's happening in another city like Malang, for example, how can I address this? So having this kind of local problems about water and things like that needs to be addressed locally, but also what's happening globally, internationally about this problem. So real world problems we need to work on. Communication about this problem we need to work on. So this is one thing. But also, if we think about STEM pedagogy, STEM lesson, STEM curriculum, we might need to address the STEM standards. What are they? What is the practice of STEM? First, we need to have rigorous science. So if we're teaching science, STEM, so science in STEM, so we need to capitalize on STEM, the facts of STEM, of science, the theory of science, the nature of science in STEM. But also, I will say the same about math. So we have to have this kind of rigorous discipline, okay? Integrate science, technology, engineering, and the mathematics content, but also interpret and communicate STEM information, engage in inquiry. So we need to have hands-on thinking scientifically, and I will come back to the inquiry in a minute. Engage in a logical reasoning and thinking, collaborate as a STEM team, apply technology if we can. When we have these 7 elements, we can take these 7 elements and we can say, all right, how many elements of these 7 can we include today in our lesson? You don't have to have the 7 elements in one lesson or in one unit, but you can have a rubric, for example, to be able to address this maybe over a unit or over a course of a curriculum. This is another example here about engaging or addressing the STEM culture in school. So I found the next generation science standard quite engaging, especially when it comes about inquiry and the design, learning through design and learning through inquiry. But also when we look at the disciplinary, so they are capitalized in science. So what we need to do more, and which is missing from this one, is capitalize in our culture. You cannot take the next generation science standards and applying in Indonesia as it is. So the culture capital is quite important. And that's what's missing in this. If we are imparting this or if we are integrating this in our community. This is another example here about engaging in the elementary. So you get the student, you get the learning environment, you get the standards, but also you get at the end of the slide here, the global issues and the local issues. And that's what we need to have in mind when we are developing the unit for teaching science or have a science curriculum. This is coming from our research in Saudi Arabia. We done this project, and we were studying the views of science teachers about STEM and how can we integrate them and the challenges they have about the integration of STEM, and moving from science teaching to integrating STEM teaching. And we found that we have to have two cultures here, school culture, but also the partnership culture. So you have to build a community inside your school, in the school, but also to open this school and to cooperate with the industry around you and with the resources around you to be able to move from the science or pure science to have integrated STEM. So we need to think about that when we and address this when we have the curriculum. I'm going to move on because maybe the time will be kind of ending soon here. Integrated STEM curriculum here. Very quick, 7 elements to integrate the STEM curriculum here. Project-based learning, based on real problem, based on global problem, based on local problem. So we have to come in the year and say, all right, what is the problem we have today in Indonesia? Around the world, how can we address that? How can we connect local problem to a global problem? And that will address the in and out school, museums we have, and so on, the activities that is going every day. How can we bring this to the school? What's happening in the newspaper today? How can we address that? Like the pandemic we have, how many of us communicated the pandemic issue and the stereotypes about the pandemic we have now to the food we are eating, and to how the science is addressing this, how the science is addressing this, how are we thinking about this pandemic? This needs to happen very early. As we're asking students to put mask on, why do we have to put mask on? How can we argue that from the science background? Integration of technology and virtual learning, and I think we are addressing this all in the school now. Assessment need to be changed. Considering assessment for learning needs to be changing. What we are expecting from STEM need to be reflected on our model of assessments. Our professional development need to be different. When I'm preparing a teacher to teach science is different from preparing the same teacher to teach STEM issues. So that need to be considered, but also on formal science education. How can I prepare teacher to be able to communicate with the museum and to bring the museum to the school and take the school to the museum? That needs to be, teacher needs to have a training about that. Outreach is quite important to listen to the future of the student. The future of the student is the community, is the industry, is the needs of the society. So we need to update us in the science curriculum about that. But all of that will be kind of a communication, and to have this kind of business and schools, universities, and all of that need to be ongoing engagement in a communication. When we do that, we will end with a STEM student who will be able to help us in the future. He will be able to, when he goes to the museum, will not be just amused by the entertainments that in the museum. He will think about the museum and engage in the museum with his science hat on, okay? But also thinking about business and all this stuff. So that's when we end with STEM. So this is a puzzle we need to sort out to have a STEM culture. But missing one element of this puzzle will create a gap in the STEM culture. So we need to put things together, assessment, community, our vision nationally and internationally, and that will help us. This is kind of what we have addressed today. It's a message for all of us, for our science educators, but also for our research. We need to think about this kind of science capital, STEM capital, human capital. How can we address this? Place-based education. We talked about that today. How can we address this in our research and in our science education? Context-based teaching, career in STEM, environmental education, science-based economic skills. Science should help with the economy and should have some solutions of that. But you have to prepare your kids to be able to communicate, to be able to help you in your economy and understand what the industry needs and expected from them. Okay, I'm going to maybe have a 1 minute or 2 minutes just to give an example about how can we put that as a lesson, all right? And how can we put this in a classroom? A very simple idea here. First of all, we need to have a free space. By a free space, we mean everyone is free to think, to express idea. You need to have this kind of open space for dialogue and inquiry. So you need to allow your students to talk and you listen to them. So you have a ground rule, no one left out, good atmosphere, and they need to think, but also, which is very important, teachers don't have all the answers. All right. So how can we prepare for that? This is kind of, we make them ready. So how can we make the student focused? So you have to bring in, and first of all, here, so there are 6 elements we will consider in a lesson when we prepare a STEM lesson, for example. First of all, we say, here, looking at perspective. So you need to think about the perspective, about an image, about a film, about a cartoon, about song, about story, something to get the attention of the student, to make them focus in relation to what you are going to teach. For example, here, if I'm teaching something about a designer baby, for example, we have concerns in terms of religion, in terms of culture about that. But also we have concerns from the science background. But how can we communicate that? So we can bring this image to the student so they can reflect, they can think, they can bring their cultural thoughts about it, their science thoughts about it. And we can think about, yes, big ideas about and the big concepts about genetic disease, specific physical genetic traits, and all this stuff. But the image or film will make them focus and get their attention. And after that, we can say, all right, what do you think are the strongest arguments for the gene selection, for example? If we like to make a gene selection, What is the key argument here? Is it the parents' needs? Is it the cultural argument? Is it the religious argument, the scientific argument? What is the key argument? In this case, you let the student express their thoughts. Drawing, writing, make them write ideas down, draw ideas down, share their ideas with each other. Then make questions in pairs. Which ideas we are going to explore today? And when they are voting on this question, they will start to argue, debate, bring in the culture, bring their understanding of science, bring the capital of science, sharing ideas, exchanging views, and exchanging ideas, shifting views. It may be sorting out stereotypes by this kind of dialogue, thinking about it, sharing these ideas. So this is kind of these 7 elements, moving from broad to sharing ideas, to have a dialogue in a very open space, in a very safe space, having this kind of cultural views, cultural perspective, that will help the teacher to sort some misconception about science, some misconception about religious, some misconception about stereotypes about culture. And this is quite important. And this is a big rule for our science education, not just to deliver science. I'm going now to end this by asking the host. I have a video, very nice video, showing a teacher how it's challenging their students, but also having this kind of a space, environment, free environment, free space of dialogue, free space of interaction, changing the type of assessment. And I think that is what we need when we are delivering science and STEM capital. So could you please put these videos on, please? It's a very short one. It's maybe 3 minutes or 4 minutes. So it's quite short, but it's quite interesting. Do we have it with us, the video?
Well, let me ask you another question. How often do you think about things that happen outside of this town? You watch the news? Yes? No? All right, so we're not global thinkers yet, but why aren't we?
Because we're 11.
Good point. What's your name?
Trevor.
Maybe Trevor is absolutely right. Why should we think about the world? I mean, after all, what does the world expect of us?
Expect.
Mm-hmm. Of you. What does the world expect of you?
Nothing.
Nothing. My God, boys and girls, he's absolutely right. Nothing. I mean, here you are. You can't drive. You can't vote. You can't even go to the bathroom without a pass from me. You're stuck right here in the 7th grade. But not forever. Because one day, you'll be free. All right, but what if on that day you're free, you haven't prepared, you're not ready, and then you look around you and you don't like what the world is? What if the world is just a big disappointment?
We're screwed.
Unless you take the things that you don't like about this world and you flip them upside down right on their ass. Don't tell your parents I use that word. And you can start that today. This is your assignment. Extra credit. It goes on all year long. Now, wait a minute. What's wrong with this? What's the matter? Yes?
It's like so...
So what? There must be a word to finish that sentence. Someone help her?
Weird. Crazy.
Weird. Crazy.
Hard. Bummer.
Bummer. Hard. How about possible. It's possible. The realm of possibility exists where? In each of you. Here. So you can do it. You can surprise us. It's up to you. Or you can just sit back and let it atrophy. Atrophy. If there is a word you hear that you don't understand, there's a dictionary at the front of the room. Look it up. And there are these dictionaries, which you will carry with you at all times, because in this class, we're going to learn to love words and their meanings. Any questions?
Yeah. So you'll, like, flunk us if we don't change the world.
Well, no, I wouldn't do that. But you might just squeak by with a C.
What'd you ever do to change the world?
Well, Trevor, I get a good night's sleep. I eat a hearty breakfast. I show up on time. And then I pass the buck to you. Now, I want you all to write your names in these books. And what's your name? Molly. All right, I want Molly to look up the word atrophy.
Okay, thank you for putting this video for us. I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today. But also, I wish that after this conference, we get together and we build a kind of a network, and then we can work together in terms publication, research projects. I would like to see what is coming out of this conference. It's not just a conference that we present, it's a conference that we know each other, we get to know each other. So I hope that will be a following up activities from through the year. So if this is the first conference, and from a year to year, what is happening? What do you want from us, and how can we engage with each other? Thank you so much.
Okay, if you said so, maybe later I will not hesitate anymore to contact you for further collaboration, Prof. Okay, thank you very much for really incredible talks from Professor Mansour. It is like you pack like all the information that I have learned during my 3 years doctorate program courses in one day. You connect all everything about natural science curriculum, and then also philosophy and how it is related to the STEM capital and science capital. So, okay, I would like to read a question from our audience. The first question is from Sir Michelle Wallan. So she's our international student from Africa. From Africa, if I'm not mistaken. So the question is, what are the yardstick for the students to contribute within the industry environment while still in the tertiary stage using the STEM policy? So what are the yardstick for the student? Yes.
What is what?
What is the yardstick for the student to contribute? Within the industry environment. Yeah.
Do you mean the student in as grade 12, grade 10, a student in a class, a student in a school?
Yeah, in the stage of tertiary stage. I guess maybe it is in elementary school. Yeah. Okay. Using the STEM policy.
Thanks. This is quite good question. It's quite important question. When we were young, back in Egypt, we used to visit kind of some industries around us, industries that maybe have something about Pepsi, Coca-Cola, and things like that. And it's quite nice to prepare students before they visit the industry, to give them an introduction about this industry. What do we expect to see in the industry? What kind of questions they might want to ask? And when they come back to the school, what did they say in the industry? Can they, for example, here we are thinking last week, I mean, the students about this kind of a problem about pollution in water, all right, and pollution in air. And you are visiting industry that you might think that is causing a problem to the community about pollution. A simple question to engage the student with when they are in industry, they can engage with the people there. What do you do? What is your policy in your industry? Or what do you expect from us? Do you have a job from us in the future? What kind of job do you have from us? I think this such a simple activity, simple questions and simple interaction that will create kind of a memory that will stay for forever. But if we have more memories of that, more visits of that, more industry of that, that will create this kind of a STEM profile, a STEM desire, a STEM culture inside the student. Will not think about science, it's just a homework, it's just a science teacher and a science book and a science class. No, it's beyond that. There is a real science waiting for us to take part of or serving us. So this kind of appreciation between science and scientists and the industries, and this is quite important. This is a very, very, very strong message that we want to have it in the science curriculum and in science education.
All right, thank you, Prof. I hope you has satisfied with the answer, Mike. Yeah, because he is one of my students in the international based class. All right, Prof. There's a question. What the title of the movie is looking so inspiring? Some of audience asking about the title of the movie.
Yeah, I have it here somewhere, so I will send you the title of this. It's quite interesting, and I always like to put this. Even you can use it in the training when you train teachers and to get them think and even ask the students, what do you think about this environment? Ask the student voice. You can make a research by just this video to get the student voice, the trainer voice, the teacher voice. It's quite stimulating, a very nice one. But yes, I will send it to you.
Okay, so for the audience, you should be patient, yeah? We will tell you later, yeah? Okay, and then the next question is from Bapak Faisal Manurung from University Asahan. Previously, I was very interested in topic presented, something that STEM curriculum is not supported by the local community. What is the solution to this problem? And how to design STEM curriculum in higher education? So it is like he thinks that STEM curriculum is not supported by the local community. What do you think about this? What is the solution? And then how to design the STEM curriculum for the higher education? There are two questions, Prof.
About the first question about no interest from the community or local community about supporting the science curriculum. First of all, we have to ask, it's the same like the problem between or the issue about the egg and the chicken. Who comes first? And who should have the solution for that? Who should have a communication for that? The community and STEM career is losing face about the ability of the science curriculum to help them. They think that the science education we have now does not have the skills they are expecting, all right? The local community don't know how to communicate their needs to be addressed in the science curriculum and in the science education. So there is the channel between the community and the school is blocked somewhere, and it's always top down or top bottom kind of of communication. Whatever the Minister of Education is interested in, that will be happened. Whatever comes in the media, that will be happened. So it's I think we shouldn't blame the local community for their lack of engagement and communication with us, but we should have a start. We should put some efforts. Start small. Start with what you know. Don't lose hopes or confidence about that. But I would say the local community and local industry, they are in need for your help, for your skills, for something like that. But the problem is in us, in our curriculum. Our curriculum is very dry. We don't have real issues. How many times we heard Jakarta when we teach science education? How many? How many we heard Indonesia when we teach science education? How many scientists, Indonesian scientists, in the science curricula? So make your science education local before you ask the local to be science. So I think the start is from us, addressing us. Ask them to visit you. Get a fireman to visit you, a policeman to visit you, a hairdresser to visit you. Appreciate the jobs. Not just to put medical jobs, engineering jobs as this kind of top jobs. Hairdresser and people who are making makeup, any jobs should be appreciated and should be celebrated, because our point in science, this is something related to science. Back to the question about higher education and how can we do this in higher education. There are many ways to do this in higher education. Always at any and most of the universities in the world, you get the School of Education is in one part out of the campus, out of university, has no contacts with the schools of sciences, school department of physics, department of chemistry. So they are not communicating with each other. And so that's one issue. But also, we don't have STEM activities in our higher education. STEM programs in our higher education. Do we have masters in STEM? Do we have CPD, continuing professional development in STEM? So we need to celebrate from time to time the STEM vision, to be able to have this kind of STEM culture in higher education, opening the universities to the local community again. This is quite important, and that will create the STEM culture. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Prof. Hopefully, Pak Faisal is satisfied with the answer. Actually, there's one short question, one more question. I'm worried that the participant will be disappointed if I don't ask this question.
No, please go ahead.
So, yeah, what do you think about the STEM approach? Yeah, the implementation of STEM in social science, because so far she heard that a lot of STEM is only related to technology and then math, physics, and how about in business, history, and social and other social expertise? Yeah,
this is absolutely great question, and I'm sorry that I didn't highlight that in my presentation. Interdisciplinary is not just about science, technology, engineering, mathematics. it is science can be when we talk about history of science, when we talk about geography, we are talking about science. So you can make connection between different disciplines. If, for example, there are now a call for STEAM, science, technology, engineering, A for art, and the science. So it's very important to make a connection not just between science and math. You can make connection between science and geography, science and history, science and literature, and science and English. So this is quite important. But everyone has expertise in something, and that's why I'm calling for a STEM culture in the school. How can different departments can help each other to create this kind? When you have an issue about water, for example, pollution in water, here you need a science, but also you need a math. You need somebody from a geography department, somebody from sociology. How can you communicate this to the society and things like that? So you can have an issue, for example, if you have a spider map, for example, put it in the middle and just start to say how science contribute to this, how geography contribute to this, how sociology contribute to this, and you will be amazed by the contribution that it comes from different disciplines.
All right, thank you, Prof. Okay, we have reached at the end of this session. Yeah, so I can conclude that how to build a STEM capital is very important to students to connect the science in school to their society and their surroundings, which is also influenced by the school culture and partnership culture. Once again, thank you, Prof, for your attendance in this conference and your incredible talks. And thank you for the participant for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.